Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petite to Queen's Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, and today I'm joined by our VP of Operations, Amanda.
Hey, everyone.
And our Director of Content, Rachel.
Hello.
So today we're going to be talking about how to make realistic schedules without overstretching yourself. And of course, before we get started, for any of our listeners who are joining us for the first time, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And while we're on the subject, please share the love and click all 5 stars. Alrighty, so I am going to get started with asking Amanda and Rachel a question. And Amanda, I want you to sort of take the football first. So for many of us, January is a time for reflection, a fresh start, and resolutions. How can welcoming new opportunities and creating resolutions impact the schedules we're making for ourselves for the coming year?
Well, I think for many of us, the new year can bring all kinds of new ambitions to our focus. I mean, people are inherently curious and creative and sociable, and that leads to us wanting to pursue a lot of diverse interests. I know that's true for me, and I know that's true for a lot of other people. Naturally, this can mean adding new things to our schedule that weren't on there before. So, for example, a common New Year's resolution is to work out more. If you weren't already spending time on exercise in the past, that's something that you'll now need to add to your schedule and fit it in somewhere. Or for me, what I'm trying to do this year, 2 resolutions I have are to practice piano at least 3 days a week and practice Spanish at least 3 days a week. And these are not things that I was really putting much time into in the last year or so. So those are things I'll need to find a space for within my schedule. And another thing is I think that most people, when they're adding new things, their new resolutions and goals, they're not necessarily replacing things that they were doing in the past. They're just being added to their already full schedule. And we lead fairly busy lives, and so this can mean our schedule it can get kind of overstuffed with all the new things that we're adding to it in January. So it's natural to feel excited and ambitious for the new year. It's like starting a new chapter of your life, and you have all this energy and motivation to do extra things. But it can also lead us to getting a little bit overzealous and adding more to our schedules than may be realistic.
Yeah, that's a big issue for me. So I've recently come to the conclusion that New Year's is one of my favorite holidays. If it's not number 1, it's number 2. Because I love making new goals and setting resolutions. I also do like a whole budget review and everything. It's great. But I think the part that brings me down just a little bit is that I have all these ideas. Like this year, I'm going to start doing more yoga. I'm going to learn French. I'm going to get back into writing. I'm going to meditate every day. And then I have to do the part where I fit it into a schedule. And that's the part that brings me down a little bit, because then as I'm putting everything in, I'm just I have to sleep though. So
Right.
I think we tend to get very swept up, at least I do, in the New Year's resolutions. I don't have 1 New Year's resolution, I have 10. And so we're trying to find little pockets of time to slot these things into. So yeah, New Year's, at least for me, and I know for a lot of other people, it hugely impacts my schedule and how I'm hoping to be able to live for the forthcoming year.
Well, those are both really good perceptions and advice. I know that I recently put a post up on LinkedIn, which was about ditching resolutions. I use affirmations instead. I found them far more empowering, and then I can take things one bite at a time. And that really helps me keeping my schedule realistic, which is what we're talking about. So I, check that post out if you're interested. And let's go on to the next one, which is what is behind this tendency to overstuff our calendars? I mean, why do we struggle and keep leaving ourselves leisure time or wiggle room between tasks,
Yeah,
So Rachel,
I think,
you want to, Rachel, you want to get us started?
I'm just so excited. So I think a major issue, well, it's not really an issue, but the first thing comes back to what Amanda had mentioned at the very top of our discussion, which is that people tend to be very curious and they have a lot of interests and they want to learn a lot and they want to improve themselves. and those are all very commendable goals. But there are things that sort of get in the way of that. We work really long hours. Most people working full time would work an 8-hour day, but it's not uncommon for people to work multiple jobs or have jobs with much longer shifts. And then when we're off those hours, most of us in most years, not so much during the pandemic, although for essential workers, this for sure still counts. There's the whole commute where you have to go to and from your job. And then you can't just go home and then immediately dive into learning French or Spanish. You have to go grocery shopping. You have to take care of the house, feed your pets, walk the dog. Um, and so at the end of it, you're really quite tired. So you have these plans for what you're going to do at the end of the day. It's like, well, once I've got the groceries and I've made dinner and I've walked the dog, then I'm going to do yoga, meditate, and learn French before going to bed. And it's just, it's hard to fit all that in the time that, like the few hours that you're at home before you should be going to bed. And I think that another thing that we have such a difficult time with is because we're trying to fit so much in such limited time. As you said, we don't leave space for wiggle room. We don't leave a lot of space for just doing nothing and having true relaxation. And we also don't leave space for the things in life that just keep popping up. The things that I tend to call just kind of dumb stuff. Like it wasn't in my schedule for the shower to start upstairs to start showering the downstairs. So I have to drop everything and deal with that. And it wasn't in my schedule to like just all the household things and all the like having a roommate or a classmate that needs help and jumping in, and that derails the whole day. And so it's kind of frustrating that so many of us have so many goals and interests, and it feels like between work, commute, chores, random just things that have to happen because life does that. That's why we try to fit so much in such a compressed time. Um, I don't know what you think about that, Amanda.
Yeah, well, I think going off of what you said, I think I have two other things I wanted to say. One is I feel like in our society, we expect ourselves to be productive all of the time. And so that's part of why we don't necessarily leave gaps in our schedule between tasks, because we just expect to move from one task to the next. And that kind of relates to my other point, which is I think we overestimate our ability to do things and how much time it will take to do things, and just like our mental energy to get everything done in a finite amount of time. So we just expect to move from one task to the next with no downtime in between. And because of that, we tend not to block out unspecified free time, like you said. Our schedules are just full of activities, and adding a non-activity can feel weird. And we don't even usually really think about it. We just try to make the most of every single day. And that can just make our schedules really full.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tee up this next question with something that I know that I really believe, which is that everyone has choices. And the moment of choice is not always recognized, but it's always present. So with that, let's go into our next question, which is, and sorry, but I have to take a look at my notes here. What can we do to make our schedules more realistic and achievable? Oh,
Well,
and yeah, Amanda, let's get a, sorry, why
yeah,
don't you get started?
I have ideas. I want to share them. So I think first and foremost, don't expect your don't expect so much of yourself. Remember that we're human and we can't be go 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 all the time. And whether that's for work or chores or hobbies or spending time with your family, you just can't expect 100% of yourself 100% of the time. So one advice is when you make your schedules, well, most of us when we make schedules, we estimate how long each activity will take. So my advice is to overestimate how long each thing will take and give yourself that extra buffer time. That way, it's okay if something ends up taking longer than you initially expected because you've already allotted time for that. And it's okay if something unexpected comes up, like Rachel said with her shower leaking everywhere. But if you have that extra buffer time, then you'll have a little bit of wiggle room to work with this unexpected emergency. Or if you end up not needing the extra time at all, then that's great. You now have extra time to spend however you like that day, whether that's just relaxing or getting a head start on your next activity, whatever it is. My other advice is don't expect to be busy each and every hour. Leave time slots blank, because having that extra time just to do nothing is what allows you to recharge. So you can put in some blank time spots between parts of your day. So for example, maybe that first hour or so after work, or you can leave it all for the end of the day, like maybe the last few hours before bedtime. Just resist the urge to fill up every spare slot in your schedule because doing everything is unrealistic and unachievable, or else it'll leave you burnt out and stressed. And you need to have that time to recharge.
I'm actually going to just very slightly disagree with you on something there. So you
Oh, okay.
said, no, oh, shocked. No, it's a very mild disagreement, but you said like leave spaces blank in your schedule. No, I disagree. You have to leave space, like in my schedule, I have slots that are blocked off that are for just non-specified relaxation, but I have it blocked off. So it's something that's in my schedule. I get a notification that says relax. Um, and
Right.
I have a couple of hours of that each day. I have about 45 minutes in the morning and then about an hour and a half in the afternoon, or well, the evening actually, the night. Um, but yeah, so I think that you're going to be better off actually having that slotted off because if there's blank space, the temptation is so real to put
Hmm.
something there. So,
Yeah.
and my other, but my, in terms of choice, this is a piece of advice that I've been giving to Amanda for a few years now, and I think she even mentioned it in one of her blog posts on Petite to Queen,
Hmm.
which is you can't do everything every day. And so it has to do with staggering. So maybe every day you want to be doing yoga and French and writing and meditating. You can't do all of that. I'm sorry, but there's just not enough hours in a day. So maybe make it every other day for each of those activities or switch it up for every other week. So this week I'm going to be focusing on learning French and then next week I'm going to focus on writing creatively. Or you can switch it month by month. Like maybe you wanted to learn French and Spanish. Learn Spanish 1 month, French the next month, and then go back and forth. Although be careful not to mix up your languages too much, because they are
That's
similar.
what I'm. That's exactly what I'm doing with the Spanish and the French. I'm doing Spanish this month, French next month, and then back and forth because I want to
Yeah,
learn
I wonder where
both.
I came up with that example.
I wonder.
Um, so, so that's my advice, and it's something I'm currently struggling with right now because I'm looking at my schedule and realizing that it's not quite working. So trying to find ways to stagger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to jump in and say that that lesson that you're just talking about, it's something that I've been struggling to learn and implement, and I've been trying to do it for the last few years now. And I've actually scheduled it in with my day-to-day planner. Like every other day, I'll do a workout, and on the other days, I'll practice piano and Spanish. And that way, I kind of like I feel like I'm doing everything, but I don't feel like I have to do everything every day, which is just
Yeah.
impossible because of how time works.
Yeah. Yeah.
No time.
No, those
Yeah.
great pieces of advice. I know that I have a few hacks that I use. One is that for my work calendar, I do block off time, and it's literally it says reserved dash Lynn, and that's time that I can do whatever comes up in the day. Yesterday, I had a client that I needed to help them with something that if I hadn't had that big reserve spot in, I would have been just everything would have gone sideways. And I had the same thing sort of happen on Monday unexpectedly. So the other thing that I do is that when you use different types of scheduling apps, here at Petite Queen, we use Calendly, but I make sure that I do add a buffer for anything that someone can schedule with us. So it's 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after. And that gives us that period of grace. For me, get another cup of coffee, go to
Yeah.
the restroom because of the other cup of coffee. you know, but just to sort of, sort of reset and then, and then make any kind of notes that we needed to make so that we're ready for the next thing. And because I do that before and after, that really, the other thing that I do is I will only allow so many different types of appointments per day. That way I don't get, because like right now I'm under my stage sort of lights here. And I find one day I had 6 different things. I was a guest podcast, we had client meetings, we had our own podcast, I think. And it was like at the end, I mean, I was literally squinting in the in the last one, which was our one of our own podcasts, because I'm going like, oh, and I went, well, it happened because of it was right that first week. It was just last week. The first week back in January, and all these things that had been sort of shifted or moved because of the holidays. It was just a crazy, crazy week. But those are things that you can do to consciously um, uh, put that in place. The other thing that I do is that, which is another hack that I use, is I do multitask. Now, and you can do this in a couple of different ways. So for me, I have a YouTube workout video that I use, and I'll put it up, and I get it going on my laptop, but I have my TV on, so I'm watching CNN at the same time. you know, and honestly, the news, it just sort of regurgitates along over and over again, but I can actually sort of be tuning into that and then watching my little thing and doing my, and
Yeah.
so by combining those two, there's some things that make sense that you combine. Also for relaxation, I like to watch, movies. I'll watch a movie while I'm doing one of my crafts. And everybody probably knows who's been following Petite Queen. I'm just like been making masks like a crazy person. And that's one of the things. And then during the holidays, I was working on a holiday project, which turned into a beast of its own. But doing that handwork can be, it's just a way that for me, it is relaxing because I enjoy doing it under most circumstances. And second of all, I'm also still sort of watching the TV. And honestly, I watch a lot of the little Hallmark movies, so it's not like you really need to pay that close attention.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And
Not a lot to analyze there.
yeah.
yeah. I tend not to multitask too much just because I feel like when I'm multitasking, I tend to only do one well and the other one I'm not really doing that well at all. But some things, you're right, some things can be
Yeah.
put together. So for me, I have Bluetooth headphones, not these ones, but different ones. And when I do the dishes, because we have a lot of dishes now that we're cooking all of our meals at home, when I do the dishes, I put on my headphones and I listen to an audiobook. So people out there who want to read more, audiobooks count, and you can listen to them while you're doing other activities like your chores. And I wouldn't recommend them for working out. I tend to run slower when I listen to audiobook. Music is a little bit more
Yeah.
energizing.
Yeah, there's definitely things like at work, multitasking is very difficult for me because you're right, I'm not paying attention. I either start to focus on one thing and completely the other thing is oblivious.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely. So, but anyway, those are some hacks. So let's move on to the next question as I look at my notes here. So Amanda and Rachel, and we're going to start Rachel with this. You know, I know that we've touched on this during the discussion about how our collective aims to be productive all the time from our greater societal structure here, certainly in the US. And can you talk more about the role of our social and economic systems in all of this?
Yeah, so I would say that our social and economic systems are really central to our packed schedules every day. So I'm going to forewarn you by mentioning that I'm a sociologist. I'm not just saying that to make myself sound super cool, but just to sort of I think about these kinds of things a lot. It's what I do, um, and our society is framed well. Framed in capitalism, of course, and it's meant to go in a certain way. There's ideas of what capitalism should look like, what it does look like, and we're in our fourth, fifth decade now of deregulation and trickle down economics. But my point is though that our current work system is that we work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, typically, thanks to the unions back in the early 20th century. So, but that the unions are arguing for is that you have 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for work, and then 8 hours for leisure. But you do not have 8 hours for leisure at all, because as I've mentioned before, there's the commute, there's the chores, and by the end of all of that, you are just bone tired many days, and then you have to do it 5 days in a row. And at the end of that, when it's finally Friday and the weekend comes, you're tired. You're still tired. You have to recover from all of that mental and or physical exertion that you were doing. And there are plenty of chores that have gone to the wayside. You don't get to just wash your windows or even do any good cleaning of the house most weekdays. So that gets pushed to the weekends. And so my point is, and I keep mentioning this, you are tired. And it sounds a bit insidious, but it's good for capitalism in a way that you're so tired, because you're so tired that you have to spend money you're willing to spend money for convenience because nobody actually wants to head to the market, buy food, and go home and cook a meal. It's easier for you to order food. And you also, so not only are you paying for convenience because you're just dead tired, because you spend so much time, or you have so little time for fulfilling all of our goals and interests that we've been talking about, you're looking for little hits of dopamine any chance you get. And buying things for a lot of people gives them that dopamine. I know that every time I buy a new hat or a new lipstick or a new dress, I'm just like, oh, yay. And I get excited because it's a quick and easy way to make yourself feel pretty good, which that's easier than, say, like writing something that's wonderful that would make me feel better in the long run, but I just don't have time. You know what I mean? So when we're looking at the economic system, it's just the fact that it keeps us so limited in our time and so tired. And I'm tired all the time.
I am too, unfortunately. I think you did a good job of explaining the external and physical effects of how our society is causing our schedules to be like this. But I think another one is how um, capitalism in our society, they instill values of being productive all the time in us. It's that aim for endless growth and expansion. And we often measure our worth by how much we accomplish or how much we produce. And it's
Internalized
not just
capitalism.
exactly. And it's not just work either. I mean, this goes back to childhood and school. I look at extracurricular activities and homework and all of that academic achievement. Um, they were training us from when we're very young to be busy all the time and to do a lot of different things. And when you're young, that's easy enough because you're still new and you have all this energy. But as you get older, you don't have that kind of energy, and you have a lot more responsibilities that take up a lot of your mental energy. So yeah, with
Yeah,
all
and
this
that creates a
said,
certain guilt when you're not doing
yeah,
something.
yes, I feel guilty when I'm not doing something at least vaguely productive, whether that's productive for work or chores or just something that's one of my goals. If I'm not working on one of those things, I feel bad and like I'm being lazy, and I don't like that. Um,
It's difficult
and
to unlearn.
it is. And like I think for me, I even struggle with my leisure time. Like instead of looking at hobbies as just like a fun hobby to do when I just want to relax and do something fun, I make them goal-oriented activities. So like I have to read so many books per month. I have to like practice piano for so many hours per week or something. And it's just I feel like I'm turning hobbies into something that needs to be an accomplishment. And I think that's kind of again due to internalized capitalism and wanting to be productive all of the time.
Yeah, so we got a little bit darker and heavier for this segment, but
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
that's
no, no, I think that, we all have naturally negative forming thoughts in our heads. That's just really out there. And one of the things is, once again, is to really take a look at that and to say, okay, no, I mean, I deserve to have this time that I'm just laying on the sofa, having a cup of tea and reading my book, you know, and
Mhm.
where it's not an attack on your self-worth. And you're right, when you do, though, you put those pressures on yourself, that something has to become, uh, that you have to do so many things, you have to make so many masks, or else, then you're just feeding the beast instead of
Mhm.
just letting it flow. So let's sort of move into a new conversation about, which is sort of my segue of how do we transform that the way our society functions as a whole, and what steps can we take? Now, once again, there's just three of us here talking about this, but it's really about starting this dialogue. And once
Mhm.
again, it's just one drip, but every drip, can create a fountain. So let's
Yeah.
have Amanda start off.
Yeah, that kind of actually leads to my first point. What I was going to say is that, I mean, on an individual level, we can only change so much, and we can only focus on changing our own behavior when we're just looking at ourselves. We can try to fix our own schedules and our own attitudes, but to transform society and societal expectations, that will take a lot more work from us as a community. So, on a basic level, that means communicating. Communication is vital, and we need to be talking more about how busy we are, how much stress this causes us, um, and so on. So, like what you said, this podcast is one example of us communicating and kind of getting those ideas out there and getting the conversation started. Because the more we discuss these issues and see how much we are affected by them, the more we can start to look for solutions to these issues. It will eventually lead to shifts in how we as a society see things and the expectations that we have of ourselves and of others. It's about raising awareness and shifting that Overton window. Um, so this is a little bit slightly off-topic example, but look at politics and what kinds of policies people accept as something that we should have. So in the 2016 election, one of the Democratic candidates, Bernie Sanders, was running on a platform of Medicare for all. And at the time, that was considered an impossible dream. That's something that would never work in America. We were like, no, we do not want Medicare for all. That's socialism or whatever. But fast forward 4 years, that that dialogue has shifted. Now that people are talking more about this one policy, it's actually something that a majority of Americans actually support and want. And that just shows that by talking about something, you can change how you think about something and change what society's expectations are or desires are.
Mhm.
And so going off of that, the next step I think is political change. So societies generally only achieve real change when we start updating our laws and our policies and start putting protections in place for people, like what Rachel mentioned with shortening the work week and the work day at the beginning of the 20th century. So do your research on political candidates and get out and vote for people. Vote for the people that will push for the changes that you want to see. And going further, you can also talk to your elected representatives, because showing politicians what matters to us helps in bringing about statewide and nationwide changes. And this can mean changes in how long our workdays are, how long our work weeks are, like you mentioned, changes in vacation time and sick leave, and more. And we just need to be pushing for changes that benefit the workers and aren't just benefiting the big corporations.
You can also join a union.
Yes.
And to keep in mind that politics is politics as we see it, government, the parties, federal, state, it's also very local. And you can change these things in much smaller settings, maybe in city ordinances or the way your own institution functions. You can campaign within, like I'm at a university, so oftentimes you can campaign within a university to sort of change things. And also, but yeah, talking to your friends about, hey, I'm trying this new thing where I take an hour every day to do nothing. To just do whatever tickles my fancy that particular moment, and that's the rule. And even that can get people sort of thinking and talking, because we deserve to live happy and fulfilled lives without being so gosh darn tired all the time.
Yes.
All right. Well, we got a little heavy there at the end, but let's sort of work back to the beginning and let's do one quick speed round. So what I'd like is for each of us to provide our favorite hack to create a schedule that works for you and that does not overfill your time. Let's go with Rachel first, then Amanda, and then I will finish up. So Rachel, what's your top tip?
So I already mentioned one, which is staggering. So keep that in mind. I'm cheating. I have a second one. And that is take notes. Like literally write it down, what's working and what's not working in your schedule. If you find that you don't have time one particular day for a particular activity, write that down, write down what happened, and see if there are trends, see if there's anything that you can and should change. It's all about being self-reflective and also being kind to yourself. Don't get mad at yourself for not having time to do French today.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both of your points, the staggering and the taking notes and readjusting as you go. Um, Mine, I think I've already mentioned it. I'm sorry, but I think it's really important. Is overestimate how long things will take and give yourself that buffer time. I think that really helps with making your schedules work more effectively and more realistically than they otherwise would.
Okay. And my top tip is to take a break every day. So put in your own 15-minute break where you can get up, stretch, breathe deeply, close your eyes. I will often walk to our post office box, which is just down the street. But that activity, I get outside, I get to breathe some fresh air, and I'm actually physically moving, and I sort of just get a shake out. Whatever's sort of going on, sometimes I'll just let my mind wander, but that little break really helps. And obviously, really, you should be taking more than one 15-minute break, but I literally put it in your schedule so that And then when you do feel like you're starting to get overwhelmed, or that you just like, oh my gosh, to just literally stop and take that moment and just close your eyes, breathe deeply, shake it out, and then go, okay, now what? And that moment of pause will help you with clarity so that you can move forward. So maybe I
Yes.
gave more than one tip.
But I support it. I'm a big fan of breaks and like giving yourself like a break every hour or so.
Mhm.
Okay, this has been a great conversations about how to create schedules that work for you and don't stretch you too thin or make you too tired.
I'm so
And
tired.
and I think it's perfect timing for everyone who's out there trying to make their New Year schedules or looking at their resolutions. So that's wonderful. And for everyone out there, if you have ideas and you would like to share them with us, you can leave us a comment. We love to hear your thoughts. And if you have a question or you'd like to suggest a topic for discussion, you can of course leave it in our comments, but you can also email us at jointheconversation@petitequeen.com. And to stay current on all of our insightful advice and breakthrough advantages, go to petitequeen.com and sign up for our weekly wisdoms newsletter, and you will not miss any of that, and you won't miss any of these episodes. So thank you so much for listening. And Amanda and Rachel, thanks for a great conversation today.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.